Hey, Ron. I think it got you muted there. Let's see if they can unmute you. Hey, everybody that is tuning in.
There you are.
There we go. We finally got together.
Yeah, you bet. Love that video. That was cool.
Yeah. Those are all look like recent memories. That's kind of, it's funny to see it. It's oriented in a way that it looks like, a long life lived. But those are all things that have happened in the last maybe couple of weeks, and it's been an incredible, strange, wild, and crazy couple of weeks. Thanks to everyone that's joining us here today. Ron, I know we've been on the phone a lot in the past week, coordinating some other things and coordinating this meeting, and it really, really means a lot that you're going to be able to join me today. And I think that Jeff's going to log on with us here as well. But I'm just really, really tickled that you're taking the time to chat with me today.
Pleasure to be here.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Well, for everyone that is online, you'll see me here. My name is Jared J.B. Boyd. I am a columnist with the Daily Memphian here in Memphis, Tennessee, and I am also program manager of the new WYXR 91.7 FM. I am here live from Radio World right here in our production room at the Crosstown Concourse. On the other side of me, we have Lori and Jared McStay. They're switching the glide, and they're cracking out the tune. So if you're joining us now, I really, really appreciate you being with us. I'm here and I have an extreme delight as someone who is a fan of Memphis music, of Stax Records, and the history within and without those two entities, where they intersect and where they reach out beyond. As a fan, I am really, really thrilled to be here with one of the creative directors of that organization, Mr. Ron Gordon. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah. Ron, for people who might not know, one reason that I really, really wanted to be here when Miss Whitney Hardy from Third Space asked me to be a part of this event. She asked what sort of topics I might want to explore that involve some sort of intersection between Memphis's music history and art. One of the first things that came to mind is just how I think there's an underrated narrative in the way that music marketing and visual art worked together to make Stax a label that really had a visual language in a way that you only hear people talk about in terms of labels like Blue Note and sort of having a true just sense of uniformity in some ways to their approach to how art and visual art complements the music. And you're a sort of a living testament to that story. And if we could sort of take a step back before we talk about some of these records, could we talk about how you ended up in that role and in that position?
All right. I was a musician. I played keyboards for the Barkays for a couple of years, and then when I left there, it was just time to leave, and went to work in the advertising department. I started looking for a job. I wanted to be in advertising, and I looked everywhere, and nobody would hire you without experience, and how do you get that? So I ended up going back and talking to my friend Deanie Parker, who was the publicity director at Stax, and we had many conversations over the years. We were good friends, and she told me that they had just hired Larry Shaw to be advertising manager and formed an advertising department, and I should go see him. And I went and saw Larry, and we hit it off very well. He was a little older than me and from Chicago, from the advertising business, didn't really know music, didn't really know the market, didn't really know the age group particularly. And he saw that that's kind of where I fit in, and I had a strong interest in advertising. He asked me to write him a letter and tell him why I wanted the job, which I didn't realize what a test that was, but I guess he just wanted to see how well I could write and what I had in me. So I actually wrote the letter from a hotel in Chicago while I was on a gig with the band, and I got hired. So I started there at the bottom and became advertising manager myself after Larry got promoted several times, and it was a great ride. I don't think any of us really realized the legacy that was being created at Stax at the time. We were just doing our jobs and enjoying it, and creating music and creating art. I hope I can do it justice today and sharing some things that I experienced.
Sure. Well, with just an hour, I know that there'll be so much more that will be left to explore, and there's so many wonderful books and texts about that history, and but you could go on for days really trying to explore that context. Were you from this area originally?
From Memphis, yep. Raised in Memphis and grew up through the birth of rock and roll and all the way up. All the things that happened there. Memphis was really a center of everything, music-wise, and it was a great place to be. I don't think we realized that either at the time, that we were in the center of things like we were. But it was just something we took for granted. But looking back, it was a great place to be.
Sure. You didn't did you go to Booker T. Washington with the other Barcades? How did you end up in the group, and what spurred your departure into Avatar?
No, I wasn't there after the plane crash with Otis Redding. 4 members of the Barcades were killed, including the keyboard player, whose name was also Ronnie, and he was also white. We were the only 2 white guys in the history of the Barcades, I guess. Only 2 Ronnies, as far as I know. But they wanted to reorganize the band and had auditions. And I was playing with a mixed group at the time, and the trumpet player put me in touch, and I auditioned, and there it was. So,
prior to being in the group, did you have any strong thoughts about Stax and what was going on there? There's sort of there's a lot to explore there, but during the Atlantic years, visually is much different from those later years. Do any memories stick out of you of sort of, you already mentioned nobody knew at the time that such history was being made, but do any memories stick out to you of holding a Stax record in your hands, or 45, or hearing something on the radio before becoming a part of the organization?
Oh, sure. I was aware of the music. I didn't have any personal contact with Stax prior to that. I remember hearing on the radio about the plane crash on December 10th of 1967, and it hit me like a brick. I was very, very shocked to hear that, and of course had no idea how it was going to impact my life, but it certainly did. A couple of months later, I was in the Barcades.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, Stax was a key player in Memphis, and what they call the blue period, I guess, when the label was blue. After I think about '68, it changed to yellow, and they call that the yellow period. So a little bit different thing going on.
Sure.
So I was there as an employee during the yellow period. So.
Yeah. In what role did visual art play in your life growing up? I mean, prior to having that role in advertising, did you take photos? Did you do any sort of painting, anything like that sort of signaled a later shift in that career?
I didn't fully understand the first part of that question. What role did what have?
Visual art outside of music.
Art.
Were you a visual artist at all?
Not so much. More my creativity came out through music at that point, but I was certainly always interested in from the time I was a little kid, thinking of slogans and different things. But advertising was a natural for me.
Sure. If we could talk about Larry Shaw and his leadership within the Stax organization and that shift that took place. As we talked on the phone earlier, I mentioned Rob Bowman's book, sort of mentioning the gritty and groovy David Porter record where he's shirtless and there's a woman caressing him. And there's a quote in Rob Bowman's Social USA book, if you haven't read it, where he is a quote from Mr. Shaw, who was Stax creative director that sort of created the shift of the yellow period. That said that he felt like that record stood out to him as a misunderstanding of how artists should be visualized from the label. Do you have any sort of thoughts about how the art changed in that yellow period? When I think of the Atlantic years, I think of the Sam and Dave, Hold On, I'm Coming, on top of the cartoon turtle and that kind of thing. And there were some cartoonish things that happened in the yellow period. But how do you provide context for that shift when Mr. Shaw comes in and this is the later years of the label, and what role visuals started to play, and what theory was behind those visuals?
Okay, there's 2 or 3 questions there, I think.
You're right.
This discussion wouldn't be right to have without without giving homage to Larry Shaw. He was my mentor and my friend, and I miss him every day. Larry Shaw was a dynamic force in Stax and brought about a lot of change in a lot of ways, and had a lot of influence at a lot of levels. His feelings about the David Porter album, I don't know that I'd heard him state that before Rob Bowman's book, which, by the way, is something everyone should read. But I agree that I always felt like to show an artist with if he's a sex symbol guy, and you want him to be, or want him to be appealing to the women, to show him with a woman is kind of counterproductive to achieving that goal, because she's there and you're not, whoever the woman is that's looking at the cover. So I think that was the feeling about that. It was the wrong image to convey for several reasons. Wasn't particularly right for David, I don't think, and certainly wasn't right as a marketing tool. So, the early covers, there was some decent covers in there, but there was like a lot of cartoons, like you said, a lot of things that weren't all that cool. After they left Atlantic, and as most people know, that if they know Stax history, the whole catalog was abandoned when they left Atlantic. They didn't own anything. And Al Bell, through his genius, released 28 albums at one time to create a catalog. We were with ABC Paramount, was distributing us then, and they created those 28 album covers, which none of them individually, with the exception of maybe Hot Buttered Soul, are really that awesome. But collectively, I respect what they did to get them all together that fast, and that was a good achievement. After Paramount, after we departed from them, then the sales department basically was doing album covers, not doing them, but farming them out. We had a New York ad agency that did a lot of covers in those days when Shaw was hired. He continued to use them some. Continued to use them with his direction for a while. I joined Shaw. I don't know if he'd been there, I think about 3 weeks when I first met him, and it was probably 3 weeks later that I started. So I was in on the ground floor. His first real masterpiece was the Black Moses cover. I don't know if you have that show,
Sure.
but that was very attention-getting, groundbreaking, and did a lot of good to Isaac Hayes. And that cover opens up. You probably can't do that on your phone.
That's
Actually,
quite a lot.
Huh?
That's
Okay.
quite a lot.
All right. It opens up into a cross, and Isaac's standing there.
This is
I
This is probably not great that it just ripped, but
Yeah.
this is one of several copies that I have. That this one didn't even have the record with it. But.
Yeah. So that was quite a cover, and just the beginning of his creativity in Stax.
Did you get the sense at all at the time, or maybe even now, that Stax was sort of breaking ground as an organization in the South that was able to market specifically to consumers of commodities that had cultural cachet with Black America? I know that reading about Mr. Shaw, that was something that maybe wasn't foreign in his native Chicago, but I kind of get the sense in what I've read of Stax over the time and what I've asked of people over the time that this was sort of more than music. It was almost like a Black ad agency in some sense, or at least had Black people in mind in ways that other ad agencies didn't. Do you get that same sense?
Yeah. I mean, definitely. We were involved in a lot of things. So. And in the community, Shaw was also very big on giving artists, illustrators and photographers and people, giving them a shot at giving them some work, black and white. So we did a lot of that. And we can talk about that some more when we're looking at specific album covers. Got a picture of Shaw, by the way, here behind me. If you can see this. This was him and I at the opening of the Stax Museum.
Amazing.
That was the last time I saw him. He passed away just a few weeks after that. But great man.
Amazing. Miss Mary Peak Patterson, who was vice president of the Gospel Truth subsidiary of Stax, which I just wrote an extensive liner notes project about a collection of music from that project. When we sat down, she spoke about how Shaw and his team had an ability to truly make covers speak. And, you know, it was one of those things where she used it as a slang term that she was able to convey to me what she meant. And that was, you know, if someone was attractive or whether it was not, being able to sort of do things to maybe enhance someone's character and enhance someone's persona without maybe even without a photograph sometimes, with a photograph sometimes, with an illustration sometimes. What is making a cover speak, if you were able to extend that thought that Ms. Peak Patterson shared with me?
Repeat the question.
In that vein that Ms. Peak Patterson shared with me of how you make a cover speak, from inside that department, what was sort of the theory, and what were some of the methods in which you might be able to make a cover speak when someone walks into a Popular Tunes and sees a cover?
That's a pretty big general question. We kind of took each project on its own. Each artist on its own, and you know, address each project separately. And like you said, sometimes somebody might be great for a picture, and sometimes maybe not so much. Sometimes we didn't have access to taking pictures. Sometimes the artist had total ideas about what they wanted, or maybe the artist or the producer come to us with artwork, or come to us with a photograph they wanted to use, or sometimes they had no idea whatsoever and left it completely up to us. And everything in between. Sure. So while I was there, I kept a running log of projects we were doing, of the album covers we were working on, and the various stages they were in, so I could give status updates, you know. And I looked at that the day I left. I left there for the last time. There was 130 albums that I had worked on during my 4.5 years in the advertising department. So we had a lot going on. Some of them we just pretty much handled the production. Some of them we took them from the very get-go and brought the idea to life. So,
yeah,
big answer, I guess.
Scooter Taylor is producing for us on the back end. Scooter, I believe Jeff Colaf is waiting to get in and chat with us. And while we're waiting on him, I know that Mr. Gordon and I, we talked about several records that stood out to you, or at least the ones that I have in my collection. And so we can start going through some of these if you'd like.
Sure.
And I think we're going to say hello to Jeff in a minute. This one is pretty interesting to me. Isaac Hayes, live in Sierra Tahoe, it's sort of got this storybook kind of display that you don't see very often. And mine is about torn in half. Because I think that's probably
take care of your covers, Jay.
Well, some of these were gifts. I think this one came from my Aunt Lynn. So this is she played it in real time in the 70s, and so I've inherited that. It makes for better memories, right?
It is 45 years old, so I'll give you a break there.
Yeah. Well, most collectors will probably wince at this, and so as an artist, I imagine why you might be worried about it falling apart there. But you know, an intricate cover design. What was it like to kind of create this storybook in production as well as during the concept?
Well, the concept was to have the open doors and have Isaac showing through there. It's a double album. There's 2 inner sleeves, and any way you turn the inner sleeves when you put them back in there, there's going to be a picture that shows appropriately through the doors. Had the idea for the cover for the open doors, and flew out to Lake Tahoe, went to the hotel. And all the doors in that whole hotel were glass doors, aluminum doors, you know, nothing pretty at all, nothing that we could use for that concept. So those doors were actually inside the theater as you would be leaving, and it wasn't 2 doors, it was actually 4. There were 2 double doors. And we retouched them. There was some plaques hanging on the walls that we hung on the doors and made it look like 2 doors instead of 4, and did a lot of heavy retouching on that cover. But it was that cover was actually nominated for a Grammy Award for cover design.
Oh, wow.
Didn't win that year. There was a bigger production that won. but we were very happy with the way it turned out. You can't see, but there's embossing on it. And it's a lot of piece.
Yeah. Amazing. You have sort of thoughts about Isaac at that level of his career to be able to carry. I mean, he headlined what became Stax, and to do a double album like this with some incredible covers on this record and just some unforgettable performances. I hear all about what sort of those intimate performances with Isaac were like versus the ones that were larger. The hysteria around this artist at the time to be able to pull off a double album, live LP that has this sort of intricate cover design, was all that sort of a part of bringing this artist into someone's home? All those thoughts there.
Yes, it was a big deal. Isaac was a big artist by that time, and we had really no budget restrictions on us. For anybody particularly, we had the money to work with, and so we just wanted to make a nice cover, and I think we did. That was had a lot of photos to work with there, and there was a lot of heavy retouching on not just the front but all throughout the thing. Big budget, but it turned out nice. We were happy with it.
Awesome. We've got Jeff Colaff joining us from the Stax Executive Director. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. You're always. You're fine. He's my guardian angel, always swooping in and helping me put things together. So thanks for coordinating to get me connected with Mr. Gordon.
Sure, no problem. Glad you guys are. Ronnie's got some great stories. I'm glad more people than just me are getting a chance to hear them today. So that's exciting.
Awesome. Let's stay with Isaac, and we're here with the Joy record. I believe this was well into his career as a really, really exciting artist. As you'll see, I figured you might notice this sticker is my mom's from college, so nobody will play her record. So that isn't a touch that you put onto the record. That's a personal touch.
I don't know if you can see. I just shared my screen with you on an ad for that Isaac Hayes cover. Gives you a little bit better idea of what the whole package looked like with the 2 inner sleeves and the fold-out cover.
Yeah.
Can you see that?
Yes, it's a beautiful ad there.
Good.
You wanted me to pull Joy. What sort of things come to mind when you think of this Joy cover?
Joy. That was interesting. So it doesn't look very joyful, does it? We knew that Isaac was coming out with a new album. He was busy in the studio, and that's the back. He was busy in the studio, and we knew he was working on it, trying to get in touch with him, couldn't get in touch with him. He was either on the road or busy or whatever. And we knew we had a cover to do. Didn't have any pictures of him at all that hadn't been exploited already. And I was wanting to do a photo session. Finally, one day he walked in the office and said, the new album is going to be called Joy and needs to be on the street in 6 weeks. Great, Isaac. When can we take your picture? And when can we have a photo session? He said, he can't. He said, I'm leaving in about 3 hours on a plane to, going on the road. And so I was sweating it. I didn't know what we were going to do. So I tracked down. I knew that he'd had a photo session with and a big spread in Penthouse magazine. If you're not familiar with Penthouse, like Playboy, a little rougher. And I tracked down the photographer that had done the session and got the pictures from him, and we picked out a few that we could buy from him and did that. But every single picture had naked women in it. Every one. There was nothing that didn't, especially nothing that showed any kind of joy. So we got that face picture there, and I figured we show joy as kind of a contrast. And then if you can hold it up again, Jay, the logo where it says Joy, there's a little jumping guy there. That's Isaac. But that was he was way back in the background, and there was actually a post in the room that was in front of him, and we had to retouch all that. And that's kind of how we showed the joy. The picture on the back, there was 3 girls in that picture all over him, all naked, and we retouched all that. So that's how we solved that problem. I like that album. I'm kind of happy with the way that one turned out with all the challenges we had. I think it worked out well.
In my DJing career, it's become a song in the last year and a half that I've noticed a lot of DJs are playing around town. It was sampled by 8-Ball MJG, the title track, Joy Part 1. And so it's been in my head all day, actually. When you mentioned it, it's been in my head. And so it definitely is a record that sticks with me. And I know that this might be the one record when I started inheriting records from my parents and my family. This was one that I noticed that my mother had a copy and my Aunt Lynn had a copy, and they both personalized them. So there must have been some sort of fighting over this record to be sure that they were listening to the one that belonged to them. I want to stick in sort of in a similar vein with Mr. David Porter, who's often talked about in connection to Isaac Hayes with their solo careers. I think have played out quite differently. And this one I have a lot of copies of, and I'm glad I picked one that wasn't beat up too bad, because I have one with strange duct tape and all that stuff on it. But it's a very simple image and says a lot. What does this record bring to mind when you think of it?
Well, you can't tell from where you're holding it, but there's a girl in a T-shirt. The T-shirt's got David Porter on the front of it. That was done, I think, by the ad agency in New York.
Okay.
Before we let go of them, but I think the sales department actually handled that one, so I wasn't involved.
Okay.
So there's a the Stax urban legend about that cover is there's at the museum right now there's a photo show of Joel Brodsky's images, who Ronnie worked with, and along with some other photographers to shoot cover art and things, and there's a contact sheet of two models wearing that, one wearing the shirt, one not wearing the shirt but holding it and covering up part of her torso. But the model that's wearing the shirt in the Brodsky shoot is not the model that there, at least that's the urban legend. The urban legend is they didn't have a good image for that, so they asked one of the female secretaries at Stax to model it for her, and they hosed her down with cold water in the parking lot and had her put the shirt on over, and then took a picture of it. That's the urban legend of Threat by Mr. David Porter, unsubstantiated.
Certainly wouldn't happen in today's times, and nor should it.
No, would not happen in 2020. No, but it is one of those interesting.
I don't think that's accurate, but I'll not argue.
Well, I'm glad that you can't take credit for that one, Mr. Gordon. This one that you mentioned that also has a bit of controversy behind it.
No, that's the wrong one. That's the wrong one.
That's the wrong one.
That was done in England. They were an English group. Yeah. Wrong one. So
okay.
that was done in England. That was their first album. We had nothing to do with it. We just picked it up for distribution. And then they did another album you don't have, I guess. Maybe I can show you that.
I thought we were going to talk Mickey Mouse today.
No, it's a little bit more interesting story than Mickey Mouse. Let me see if I can. I'm going to see if I can share my screen if I can find the cover.
All right. I think we should pause for that because that'll be good. I'm interested.
All right.
Because I'm familiar with their other record, but I thought we were talking Mickey Mouse.
Oh, here it is. Okay, let me get back here and try to. I'm a little bit technology challenged, but I'll try to work this out.
Our guest is doing the production today. If y'all, thank you so much, Mr. Gordon.
Okay, I don't have any way to really blow this up, but there we go. Here.
We can see it pretty well.
Well, I just had it. There we are.
Yeah.
But it's this one over here on the right side. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So what they did, they had this new record to come out, and they sent me 5 pictures. There was 4 guys in the band. They sent 5 snapshots, and they were literally 4x4 snapshots. One of them looked like taken in a photo studio, and a couple of them on stage, and another one in a parking lot or something. I don't know. They didn't go together at all. There was no way to really use them together. There were 5 because there were 2 of one fellow. But what I did was we got 4. We turned them into slides, and got 4 slide projectors and projected them on this girl. A lot of people look at this cover and don't even notice the girl, but there's a girl in there wearing nothing but slide pictures. And we projected it on her, and that kind of solved the problem of not having the unity in the pictures, and we were able to show all 4 guys. So that was a cover that was just the story is that we overcame a challenge, and I think it was a pretty decent solution.
Sure. I think that's gorgeous. You know, when you said earlier that you guys were able to retouch the whole from a photo of Isaac and all those sorts of things, people might think, oh, well, you know, Photoshop today wouldn't be easy in Photoshop. It definitely, I don't think, could have been easy at all in 1973. What was the process like of being able to go into these photos and do effects that weren't necessarily practical effects?
Oh, retouching was a whole different ballgame then. Yeah, like you said, there was no Photoshop. Retouching was a very expensive thing. Most of the retouching that we used, like on the Joy cover, for example, the retoucher would make a very large transparency, like a slide transparency, and actually would move the emulsion around on that transparency. He was very talented, and I'm sure he went out of business very quickly when Photoshop came along. But that was an expensive process, and I think the photo retouching on Live at Sahara Tahoe alone was about $12,000, and you know that's a lot of money in today's dollars.
Yeah,
but today it'd be a piece of cake, no problem.
Yeah, you could probably hire a teenager to do it, maybe.
Yeah, right. 6-year-old, I know it.
You certainly couldn't hire me. I'll have to figure that out one of these days. There's one that you mentioned was on your mind.
Yeah, that's kind of fun. Rufus Thomas. We like to try to do things that are a little different. That's not probably the only time that's ever been done, but we got I bought a piece of plexiglass that was about, I don't know, 4 inches thick, I suppose. And we put it on sawhorses and had him get up on top, and me and the photographer were underneath, laying on our backs on the ground and shot the picture. So kind of a good solution, I thought. Had him wear new shoes. But
yeah, do you have any thoughts about this era of Rufus Thomas? I mean, walking the dog was the thing, and even before that, you know, what he did at Sun. This era, and that wasn't his last era of his career. What do you think about him as an artist that sort of continued to reinvent himself and remain relevant with young people? You could see the reaction to him at what became Stax. You know, he was continually relevant, and some of that sort of shines through in this photo. I think when you sort of bring humor into the music and the rap energy and all that sort of stuff, he stayed with the times. For quite a while. Do you have any thoughts there?
Well, he was great. I worked with him a lot when I was with the Barquets. We had a lot of occasions that we played on the same stage, and we would often back him for his part of the show. He was quite a character on stage, and really always had the crowd eating out of his hand, and very, very humorous and very entertaining, and put on a very good show. I like Rufus. Good man.
Jeff's back with us. Here's another that you mentioned, and this group is from Arkansas. Is that right?
They are. I think so. Yeah. What's the stick? Got a sticker on it? What is that? A promotional sticker?
Right. Promotional copy, not for sale.
Okay. Yeah, that one. I think there are pictures on the back, isn't it? The band's picture. Yeah, there we go. That kind of shows where we were. We went down on Front Street in Memphis, and took the picture there, and on the wall there was a brick wall, and I had a piece of chalk in my pocket that I brought on purpose, and drew that on the wall, and we shot that, and that turned out to be the cover. The trumpet player in that band was the band director in the high school where my kids went to school, and I didn't really know him back then, but met him later in life, you know, as he was in school, and he remembered that very distinctly. He said it always blew my mind that I just took a piece of chalk out and drew the cover on the wall. But that's what we did, and it worked out.
I mean, when you listen to this record, it definitely has kind of a colloquial, folksy sort of sound that's different from pretty much anything else on Stax. I mean, that's not to say that there aren't other great kind of rock fusion sort of records, but I think that just how direct and simple this cover is, and from that story, it evokes sort of that street level colloquial kind of thing. Was that what you was hoping to convey? I mean, just straight ahead.
Yeah, pretty much. That nails it pretty well.
I love it. I like it. I like this record a lot too. Here's another that you mentioned, and I only have a couple more. Be What You Are.
Yeah. Maybe you can tilt that a little bit so people can see that it's embossed. We'll give it a different. Yeah, there you go. I like that cover. It was kind of. I thought it came out really classy, and they're a classy group, and that was a classy cover. We took the pictures in a studio, and Pop's actually holding one of my pipes, one of my favorite pipes. He brought a corncob pipe that day, and we were trying to do something classy, so I switched out pipes with him. But that was one that it was going to be called. Initially, I think it was going to be called Reflections, and we had done a cover, which the mock-up, the museum has it still has the mock-up of it, but it was a oval frame with a mirror in it, a piece of mylar, and maybe you get a chance to see that at the museum someday. But that's just a cover I just was particularly fond of.
Awesome. I think it does evoke classiness. Unfortunately, this might be the only record where the cover looks better than the actual LP in there is pretty beat up.
The mock-up that Ron's talking about, I love it because the mock-up we have is hand colored. Originally, you did sort of two. There's one that actually looks like a picture frame. The other one y'all did with marker, and it was supposed to come with that family album book. So there's all these sort of individual photos of Pops and Mavis, Yvonne, and Cleota.
Oh yeah, that was a 16-page booklet. It was.
Yeah,
it was going.
I mean, when I just jumped on, you were talking about the Sahara Tahoe LP, and I think it's just the artwork that y'all were doing and the amount of design and stuff. You hit it right on the head. It's like you said you didn't have a budget for that one, and just when Stax was riding high, you guys certainly had the creative freedom and the ability to really push the boundaries when it came to packaging.
And we used good judgment, but we knew when you could do more on one than you could on another. But there was nobody ever said this is the limit. We had a lot of freedom, and with mine and Shaw's desire for perfection, there was a lot of times we'd make changes after we saw press proofs, even changes on the design, or we could do anything we needed to do.
Yeah.
Al Bell would tell it, that prior to Hot Buttered Soul, there really were no concept albums in Black popular music. And I think that visually, you guys gave so much attention and so much care to this style of music and this culture in a way that many other labels weren't doing. I don't know that I could say visually that a Motown or a Philadelphia International or I hate to really go into even comparing, but when you say that there was some sort of pushback, I think that you meant internally, but externally from the public, did you get any sense that people thought that this was too much care to take for this style of music?
No, never got that. I don't really have anything to say about that. No, we didn't hear that.
Okay.
I mean, JB, I guess even more of a question for you maybe, but, you brought up Motown and Philly International. I guess it's just sort of, I mean, can you think of a double LP on Motown that had the level of design or intricacies that Sahara Tahoe did? I mean, I think that's Shaw certainly and Ronnie carried out the work, but that's part of Mr. Bell's vision for being, the complete record label.
Right.
Because you saw the amount of design and the care and the messages that's being portrayed that you saw really only from maybe the majors at that time, Atlantic, Warner Brothers.
Sure.
reprise. I think that's one of the really cool things is that you sort of walk this line between, refined design, class, and a lot of things like the Be What You Are cover, but then you also were still able to do some sort of, more out there progressive avant-garde things too.
Sure.
And then obviously capturing the moment too by emphasizing sexuality, whenever possible.
Yeah. With all respect to those other labels, I would say my only honest answer to your question could be maybe Marvin and maybe Stevie. And that's
Stevie, sure. Yeah.
That's about it. That's all I can think about. This one is one of my favorites, actually, because it's of these bunch, probably the only record that I've bought recently, and that's why it's probably in better condition, because I know a bit more about what I'm doing now. But it's because it has a recognizable landmark, which this one is actually really, really, I'd say it's been in current events now, because this very landmark was defaced recently. I don't know, Ron, if you might have read about that. It's only been maybe 2 weeks since this concert stage was graffitied, and I think it's happened maybe 6 times in the last few months since the pandemic that this place has been graffitied. But it's a beautiful, recognizable landmark that I think has become. It's had a revival. Let's say that. I won't say it's become more important because of festivals and things like that happened prior to my days. Living on this earth were very important, but I didn't grow up necessarily at a very young age with this being a landmark in town. It has recently sort of re-emerged in the last 10, 15 years.
Sorry.
No problems. Anything come to mind when you look at this back? This is the back cover, of course, but the front is the Mad Lads, A New Beginning. Is an interesting illustration on the front, and then this very sort of practical thing on the back.
Well, that was, I mentioned earlier that Mr. Shaw and I like to use starving artists, for things that give them a shot. And that was somebody that we hired that to do the cover art. We gave him the idea, but the picture. Zoom in a little bit on the guys there, where you can see them like they're flying through the air. The way we did that, I kind of like the effect of it. But we took them out to the. I think we were at the Overton Park, I believe, and maybe I can't remember the exact location, but they were downstairs. We were upstairs and kind of overlooking a balcony, and I had them stretch their arms up, lean back and stretch, and we took the picture that way. So worked out kind of nice.
Yeah, it's gorgeous. Yes, this is the Levitt shell that is in Overton Park, this concert stage here.
Yeah.
Memphis 69 is a documentary that came out last year that sort of depicts the blues festival that was held here for several years in a row. It was an iconic. It has become or re-entered sort of the iconic space of Memphis landmarks, and it looks a lot more humble here than maybe it might anymore in the future as many Memphians continue to interact with this space. So I think it's just a beautiful sort of reminder of how we're connected through time.
Yeah, it was a good place. Actually, that video you mentioned, I think, has got the Barkays and Rufus Thomas in it. Jeff promised to send me a copy.
I'll get you one.
I'm not going to let you forget that.
You're playing outside in your pink polyester suit when it's or black shirt, pink pants, and it's 98 degrees outside.
Yeah, that was Rufus, not me.
I have one last cover here, and we can talk about some other things before we get off. But this is a dramatic experience by the Dramatics on Volt. And I imagine with something this grotesque coming out onto the marketplace in that period of time, there might have been some strong reactions, because I think even today this might get strong reactions.
Well, that was kind of an unfortunate dramatic experience. The initial title of that album was "The Devil Is Dope."
Yes,
there's a cut on there called "The Devil Is Dope," and that was going to be the title, which I didn't think that was a very good marketable title, but and ultimately, I guess other people thought that too, because they changed the title after we'd done the cover art. The artwork wanted the devil on the cover, and used a very good artist, very, very, very talented artist. And he brought it to me, and I said, "No, it's too pretty. You know, make him uglier and do this and do that." And he come back several times, and I said, "No, break the horns. You know, do it non-symmetrical." And it came back several times, several revisions, and finally we had a whole lot of money tied up in it. But I was happy with the outcome. And then they changed the title of the album from. So, a dramatic experience was the best we could do to kind of fit the cover art. But that's, if you wondered why it looks like it does, that's why.
I have wondered. There are a lot of great.
And that was a case where we had enough money tied up in the artwork, we couldn't just throw it away. It was even though we had limited, not very many budget restrictions, but there's still, we had to be prudent at some point, and that would have been wasteful to discard that.
Well, I have no more covers to hold up, but I know that last week we were talking. I was working on a project involving Mr. Frederick Knight and his debut album with Stax, and you told such a fantastic story. I'd be remiss not to revisit it in front of this audience here. An instance, I guess, and not to take the thunder away, where you weren't able to make a connection with an artist before starting the process of putting their art together for the record. I'll let you take it away there if you'd like to.
Well, okay. It would help if we could see it. But, so we had a cover. I've Been Lonely for So Long was the title of the single, big hit single. And album coming out, needed to do a cover. Didn't have any pictures of Frederick at all, and couldn't get him to come in to take pictures. He was not would not cooperate at all on that. Excuse me. So ultimately, what we did was taking it literally on "I've Been Lonely for So Long." I lost picture here. Let me find you back. Yeah. We got a tombstone and carved "I've Been Lonely for So Long" and Frederick Knight as a heading, and had his date of birth on there and death date blank, and had a guy that looked like Frederick Knight in a field in the distance, out of focus. Kind of stated the loneliness idea in a very profound way. But when he saw it, and we went all the way to press proofs. When he saw it, he freaked out, and he was. I've heard that he thought his fans wouldn't like it, or that his fans would think he's dead, or different things. But what it actually was, he was superstitious about it. He thought that if we put that cover out, he was going to die in a plane crash, and he just wouldn't hear to it. And Jim Stewart backed him up, and I agreed. I mean, I wanted to do something different, so he obviously made himself available for a photo session. And we ended up with a really nice cover for Frederick Knight. So
yeah,
that's kind of a different story.
It's an amazing story, and I'm sure there are many more like it. I'd love to continue to talk and stay in touch. And for everyone that logged on, what a treat to have Ron and Jeff with us here today. Please take some time to walk through Stax Museum and ask questions. And although we might not have fantastic people like Ron to be able to tell us the history, as it were, directly from their experience, there are so many people in town, particularly people on Jeff's staff, who can help you provide some context there. Hey, Whitney.
Hey, man.
Can I make a quick pitch? Can I make a quick pitch? If you go to staxarchives.com, staxarchives.com, you can see a ton of Ron's work that has been scanned and put online to be shared with the world. So it's watermarked and you can't download it, but you can look at it. So a ton of Ronnie's ads that he put together. The album covers, the Frederick Knight cover that he's talking about, some great promo posters and some other stuff. And it's a great collection that Ron has shared with us here at the museum, and everybody should check it out. It's very cool. So staxarchives.com.
And Ron, what are you up to now for the people at home to know?
Actually, retired from the advertising business several years ago, and been in the insurance business lately. That's what I'm doing. Semi-retired. So enjoying it. Still dink around in music a little bit.
Well, thank you, Ron. Thank you, Ron, so much for being with us today, and thank you, Jeff and Whitney.
Sure.
I'll get out of the way.
No, you're good. Look, I was having a great time. I was over here taking notes. I was writing down album covers. I was like, ooh, that looks good. I'm going to have to find one that looks better than Jared's. I don't want yours. I'm with Ron. I've got to find some more, but I think that was such a really great discussion. I appreciate you, Jared, Ron, Jeff, for joining us for Memphis Art and Design Week.